Viwe, brother, Happy New Year, and thank you ever so much for joining me.
Oh man, thank you so much for having me. It's really quite a pleasure.
Oh,
Yeah.
brilliant! Yeah. So before we get into it, I mean, how are you? Because we are back again with level 3 lockdown here in South Africa, which means obviously that for us, means that we basically can't work. So how are you coping, and how have you been coping with the whole lockdown thing since March last year?
Yeah, man, it has been such a rough kind of journey, but also it has had its perks a little bit. There has been a bit of positivity in terms of, I think we got a chance to actually get in touch with our thoughts, if I make sense. Also time to look back and breathe and connect with instruments again, or connect with music again. And I see quite a lot of people who have not even been writing. They've picked up these skills and started writing, which I've also wrote a series of works or what. So in that regard, that's the good part of the lockdown. However, the working in terms of financially, it has been the worst. I've never experienced something like this.
Mm-hmm.
We tried to pick up just after the lift in October or September, October. Things got a bit better, but now I don't even know. Now it's really difficult to even adapt what's going to happen in the future. But also we keep hopeful as always, and we're grateful for what we have.
Yeah, I mean, I as a musician myself, I obviously know I'm in exactly the same boat, and since March, we've basically been without work because there was very little actually happening when it was lifted. So it is hugely frustrating. Do you think that we as artists, as musicians, have had enough help and support through this time? Do you think there can be more support?
Really, I don't. Artists in general in South Africa did not get any support. I mean, there's a few people that got some support from the government. I mean, the cap was 20 grand, but that was from the period from March. So which is, I mean, for some people that take a turnover of 50, 60 a month, that 20 grand, it helped for that month just to sort of, but the rest of the month. So we've not been helped really. And I think we've been overlooked quite a bit as well, And we thank for some other organizations. There's Provincia from Switzerland, which contributed a fund for jazz musicians in South Africa, which, I mean, it's from a different country, but they managed to give us something, But as in, I don't really like to complain, but I feel like the government should have done a lot more for artists. The departments of arts and culture should have done more,
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So that's mine.
Absolutely. I mean, of course, as you say, I mean, one doesn't want to complain about stuff, but this is the reality, and this is, as artists, this is our livelihood. This is how we earn our living.
Yeah.
So it is a very important thing, to consider. This is obviously not going to end anytime soon, and it doesn't look like the government or local councils are really planning to help out artists that much. What do you think is the way forward for artists? How are we going to deal with this new reality, if you like?
Man, I've taken time to think about this. I think we should really venture in different things as well. We must not be afraid to look at other things to earn us income, And I know as musicians, artists in general, we're always so committed in our craft. We also such perfectionists. that we don't even consider doing anything out of what we do, because we always judge ourselves and think we'll never be good enough to do anything outside of what we do, because it took us time to be where we are in terms of music. But I think it's also time, we must take this time to really think outside the box and think, if it means think outside of music or think outside of art, I think it's one of those things we need to do, because it's easy for people. We can create these online shows and they make things look pretty. They make us look like we're working again, but in actual fact, we really are not making any money, considering comparing when we're on stage and doing these kind of shows on. Financially, they don't even make sense. Sometimes you just spend more money, and So I think we should. It's a serious thing that we should look at, and just look at other avenues outside of art, and something that will earn us money.
Yeah, look, I mean, we can go on for hours discussing possible options and so on. But I asked you on here because I want to talk about some of the stuff that you've been doing. As they say, the best place to start is at the very beginning. So, if I'm not mistaken, you're actually from the Eastern Cape.
Correct. So I was born in East London. In Mdantsane, and my family is still there. My grandparents are still there. So I was born there. I spent my childhood until I was about 10 old. I moved up to Joburg with my parents. Otherwise, I've always been, since birth, I've been in East London. I went primary school, East London, and until I was about 10. Moved to Joburg and did a bit of sports, and then in high school only, I fell in love with arts. Actually, I was doing speech and drama. I went to an art school, and then I was enrolled for drama, for speech and drama, and then that went on. But I remember correctly, below our class, there was a music class. So I would always get distracted all the time, just hearing all the music. It was not necessarily good music, but it was, it was triggering. And I went to inquire. So I actually just went up. I went to inquire, and there was a new head of department there, a guy named Ruan Baartman, who was the one that taught me. So I asked about this, and then I was very into, And in grade 10, I think when I was 16, then I switched the classes from drama to music. And then I've never looked back.
So after high school, you then went on to study. Was it in Pretoria or Joburg?
Yes, I went to study in Pretoria. So by this time, I had realized that I probably would not be a classical solo bass player. And I mean, I've always enjoyed a bit of hip hop, a bit of R&B, a bit of jazz music. So I went to Tswana University of Technology and enrolled for a jazz degree.
I was trying to think actually earlier when we actually met. If I'm not mistaken, then it was in 2009 on the Miyagi tour to Germany. I'm not sure whether it was before that or
I think it was 2005. I think it was 2005. We met in 2005 at a national orchestra course in Kimberley, a junior national course in Kimberley.
Oh, wow. Goodness, wow. Yeah, I'd forgotten that. Goodness. Long time ago.
Long time.
It's obviously very successful. You've gone on to do amazing things. Where did it all start? How did it come about?
So this was back, I think, in 2014, after I was in between postgrad, And then I had a series of compositions that were just lying around there. And luckily with my friends, I mean, all my friends are like musicians basically. So I had people to try them out. And then that's when I actually formed the ensemble, the Viwe Mkizwana ensemble. And we started as just as a jazz band of two horns, a rhythm section. And that was actually, some of these songs came out well. And then that's when we did a recording in 2016, which was surprisingly, that went well for a first album. I've never expected it to be where it was. That's when then I wrote some stuff for strings from already my previous album. I rearranged all that work, and then I wrote for strings. We had a big performance, which was a hit. And then I thought, then I must then on my second album include the strings. That went very well. We recorded now last year, 2019. We recorded now the album Tribute, which I mean did amazing things, and then all over the world. Yeah, so that was fantastic.
You kind of allude or touch on the process, but I mean, what as a composer, what is your process? Where does the idea come from? Do you wait for the inspiration, or do you sit down and say, I'm going to write something? What is the process?
It's difficult because it comes the same way. I would sit for hours in front of the piano or the bass, and nothing comes actually. So I play quite a lot every day. I try to play every single day. I kid you not, even if it's just like for 20 minutes or something, I play. And then always then moments whereby in between of playing or jamming or meditating through the music, and ideas come. And then in some instances, then it will be like I mean tributes, or I decide to write a song about you. I think of who you are and your personality, kind of those thoughts will find the way through the notes, and mostly when I write, I use, of course, the bass. I always have the bass line first before I write anything else. It's always the bass line that comes to mind, and then I try to fix the melody, and then everything else I just put at last. I mean, the whole arrangement with strings and stuff that comes at the very last minute.
Obviously, starting a new year, with the start of the new year, and we've obviously just come to the end of what has been an incredibly eventful and tumultuous, dramatic year for all of us, collectively. A lot has been happening, apart from the coronavirus. There are other things that have been happening in the world. Back in April, I think it was, a black man, George Floyd, was murdered in America, and it sort of resparked, the Black Lives Matter movement. And it sort of resurfaced, this question of color and race relations, and it sort of opened up the conversation again. What are your thoughts on this? And especially living in South Africa, where the race thing is such a loaded thing still in our existence.
And then in terms of our livelihoods, I think there's not much that has been done in terms of addressing such situations. And I think we need to open these topics. I often find it, I always see these things, you always find a certain group of people supporting their things, and then you always find a group of people supporting the different thing. It's either the people are justifying the racism, or you get these people that want to ditch the racism. But there isn't anywhere a middle ground where these two parties can sit and address these issues. You see, for the fact that we're not tackling head on such ideas or such problems. I don't think anything is going to happen. I think a few years from now, we'll still have these cases of racism until we actually start talking. And it starts by talking. We have to start and sit and address and say, you justify this, I justify this. What's the reason behind it? Because I think a lot of people don't even see the damage it causes to not only the people that they're being racist towards against, but also the coming generation. So it's a never-ending cycle. Until we sit and address these issues, I'm afraid nothing is going to happen, you know? So I think as much as there's so many platforms, there's so many things, but I don't think it's given enough attention, this racism. And especially here in South Africa, I think it's easy for people, we always slide, you know, it's always like, it's fine, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But I think it's time. I think we all mature enough to start a conversation, you know, and instead of just also being violent or angry about it, maybe it's time just to sit calmly and understand where all this is coming from. You know, we'll be surprised, you know, of the outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with everything that you're saying. I mean, just last week I was reminded of a video by, and I'm embarrassed to say that I don't remember her name, but she's a poet, you know, who has this wonderful video online, talks about the problem with wokeness. You know, the fact that everybody is, you know, constantly trying to be right. You know, they're constantly trying to prove their point. You know, instead of being compassionate, instead of being empathetic, you know, and inviting conversation. You know, and then also, as you say, you know, I think it's so important to have honest conversation, you know, to deal with things as they are. You know, young people of color in this country, you know, what advice would you give them as a musician, but then also just as a person?
I would give young people of color. I mean, first of all, they're beautiful and they are strong, and no one should label them in any way. And they're brilliant, they're smart, and they need to believe it. And I also think, as the community of people of color, it starts now that we should encourage and support, especially young people, and support us as a community, you know, because I think also the biggest part of this problem is just it's that our community should first support each other. We should actually just support each other before we can tackle like stuff like race. You see, if I'm out here, I'm Viwe, trying to make something of my life. If my community is behind me, I've got the full confidence to do whatever I can possibly do in life. But without that support, I mean, I stand no chance. And if we start now grooming these young beautifuls and kings and telling them how great they are, you know, no one can even tell them otherwise. But if they do not hear that from us, of course, if someone else there, they tell them, you know, stuff out there in the world or some racist comments, they will believe it because they've never anything from home that said, you know, we support you, we're with you, you look back, we believe you, we trust you. Most importantly, it's like, you know, they must feel like we believe and we trust. So I think we start by motivating, and every young person of color out there, they as intelligent as anyone who is, and they as strong and beautiful like anyone.
Look, Viwe, you know, we can talk for hours, but won't keep you for too much longer. Just the last question, and I ask this to all of my guests. You know, there's a wonderful, beautiful quote by Horace Mann that says, you know, be ashamed to die until you have scored a victory for humankind. You know, what is that thing for you? What is your victory before you leave this planet Earth?
Well, I want to be part of the change. And so every morning when I wake up, I have to do good and I have to change someone's life, be it by music or in any other kind of form. And I contribute. I try by all means to contribute to the society and just to beat and change where I can. So I'm all for that.
Yeah, no, look, man. Yeah, I mean, knowing you, I know that is exactly what you're about. I really, really appreciate your openness, your honesty, your generosity with your spirit. As you know, I'm a huge fan of your music, and I wish you all the best, you know, and hopefully we'll get to see each other.
And thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, man.